This is an amazing true story that happened in London. John Rendall and his friend Ace Bourke were walking through the city's most famous mall named Harrods and came across something incredible that would change their lives forever. Inside a large cage, shining in the light with golden furs and watching around with curious eyes, there stood a lion cub. Those days, Harrods was known for its exotic animal department besides its luxury goods. The lion's name was Christian, and he was clearly agitated, since he was not at home in this cage. Harrods officials said that the cub had come from Ilfracombe Zoo, and if a buyer could not be found, he would be sent elsewhere. John and Ace had to make a quick decision. The lion shouldn't live inside such a cold cage of a shopping mall. His place was the vast expanses of Africa. That's why they bought Christian for 250 guineas, but it would not be easy to raise a lion in London. However, they wanted to help him as well. A new life had started for Christian. Now he was free from the cage. John and Ace knew that they couldn't take him to their apartment. Fortunately, the large basement of the furniture store they owned would be a safe home for him. He was quite calm in his first days, curling up on the soft cushions and watching around attentively. But over time, as befits the nature of a lion, he became more active. He was jumping on the furniture and rushing around the store. It seemed that Christian might not fit in this city as he grew up. It was impossible to walk him through the crowded streets of London. But a solution was found in the Moravian churchyard. With the permission of the priest, Christian could roam freely and play games there. In time, the neighborhood got used to this extraordinary guest. But Christian was growing up, and no matter how domesticated he was, an apartment basement or a store could not be a lion's den. One day, Bill Travers and Virginia McKenna, actors from the famous movie Born Free, came to the store to see Christian. They saw how well he was being cared for, but they were worried about his future too. Virginia McKenna sighed as she stroked Christian's head. "He seems happy here," she said, but she added that he couldn't stay here forever. McKenna was actually right. John and Ace already knew that. But they were not sure what to do. They needed a guide on how to proceed. And that's when Bill Travers suggested a name to them: George Adamson. George Adamson was an expert who rehabilitated lions in Kenya and returned them to the wild. A big name, a strong pioneer in his profession. He was the best option for Christian. Following a long correspondence, Adamson agreed to take Christian. And so, London's beloved lion set off for Africa, his real homeland. The hot weather of Kenya was a far cry from the foggy days of London. When John and Ace arrived with Christian, a whole new world lay ahead of them. George Adamson took Christian to the Kora National Reserve. Here there were vast wild landscapes. However, there was one big question mark. A lion raised in the city, could it survive here? How hard would it be? How long would it take to get used to it? For John and Ace, it became a matter of parenting. Christian was very precious to them. The first days were difficult for Christian. At night, the sounds of the wilderness made him restless. Jackal howls, leopard roars, elephant grunts. They were all foreign to him. He was spending his first nights close to John and Ace's tent. They were always watching Christian from a distance. When John slept, Ace watched him through binoculars. He was always on their minds. But Christian's instincts eventually kicked in. His biggest challenge was learning to hunt. In London, he had been fed the best meat, but here he had to catch his own food. He failed at his first attempts. He ran but could not catch his prey, and sometimes he would give up and look at John and Ace. Perhaps it would take time to get used to it. He had come from a small, confined space into the African wilderness. Here was home, but he had been away for a long time. But one day, everything got changed. Christian watched a gazelle at length and attacked unexpectedly. Catching his first prey, he was now a hunter. That first prey gave Christian self-confidence. Over time, Christian learned not only to hunt, but also to be a leader. Lions in Africa don't live alone. They form a pride. And it was the biggest turning point for Christian when two lionesses joined him. One of them was a strong and fast lioness named Catania, and the other, the younger one, Naya, looked up to Christian with admiration. And so, Christian formed his own pride. John and Ace's eyes filled with tears as they watched Christian from a distance. He was a wild lion already. He stood like a king, and that meant the goodbye was close. Maybe it was time to leave him alone. That's when they realized that goodbye was close. The hardest moment for John and Ace was saying goodbye to Christian. They had bought him from a pet shop and raised him as a friend, but now he had found his way into his real home. It was a goodbye that had to happen, no matter how much they would miss him. When the day came to say goodbye, Christian looked into the eyes of his friends. He felt something had changed. He realized they were going to leave him. John put his head in his hands. "We did what was best for you," he whispered. Ace couldn't hold back his tears either. Then Christian took a few steps backward, and he did something unexpected. He turned and sprinted deeper into the forest. That's how he had overcome the sadness he felt inside, by hastening this separation. John and Ace thought they would never see him again. There were tears in their eyes, but they hid them from each other. Christian kept running away. But fate had a different plan for them. Time was passing quickly. John and Ace returned to Kenya after a year to see Christian. They would experience something they would never forget again in their lives. When they came to the area where he was last seen, George Adamson warned them. He said he was no longer a wild lion, that he wouldn't remember them, and that it would be dangerous. It'd been a long time since they'd seen Christian. They didn't know what to expect now that he was a cub when they brought him here. But John and Ace were dying to see him. It was a crazy idea. He was already back in his natural habitat and acting like an ordinary lion. Still, they wanted to see him to see if he was all right. In London, their minds were always on Christian. After days of waiting for a sign of the pride, a shadow appeared in the distance, a big and powerful lion. Could it be him? Had Christian turned into such a big, wild lion? The lion stopped for a while, then it sniffed and gazed with its eyes. After a while, it started to run, faster and faster, as it became sure that they were John and Ace. John called out to Ace, It's definitely Christian." They didn't know what to do. They waited with excitement and trepidation, and at that moment, something incredible happened. Christian lifted his forelegs, put them around John's shoulders, and rested his head on them. He had never forgotten his old friends. This hug was a sign of a long friendship and deep love. Seeing Christian hugging his friends, Adamson could not hide his surprise. He had never witnessed anything like that in the nature he had worked in for so many years. Christian and his friends were catching up as if they were having a conversation. Christian sat up after a while. He had to go now. Ace and June understood that. Christian walked deeper into the forest again. John and Ace would never forget this moment. Please don't forget to like the video, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to the channel.